Dear listeners, I am back with another episode. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and the message comes from a translation of a confession that I received. The message reads like this. Hello, Brother Nashi, how are you? Please hide me. Please do not share with anyone my identity. I have my own story that I want to share with you. Please, can you share it with the rest of your audience? My brother, I came to South Africa. This was in 2014. By that time, when I arrived in South Africa, I didn't know anyone as such, even though I had some of my relatives that were staying in South Africa. But I ended up going around looking for work. What we used to do in those days is that early in the morning, we would wake up, then we would go to this place in Capetown where we would go and market for jobs by the robots, so that when white people would be passing with their cars, if they wanted a maid, they would just stop and they will pick from the women that will be standing at those robots. A lot of people would go there. Some of them were working in the construction industry. Some of them were just working normal jobs like gardeners. So we used to hold papers and we used to write on those papers the kind of a job that you will be looking for. I went there several times, but most of the times when I would go there, I was so unlucky. I'll just return back home. But I kept on going to that robot so that I can try to get a job, because a lot of women, they were getting employed. On that morning, what happened is that there was this other man. He came and he said that he had opened up a brand new guest house. So he was looking for strong women that could work in his guest house. I quickly ran to his car. I got into the car with other women that were standing at that robot. Then he took us to his house. When we went to his house, he claimed that he wanted to go and fetch something at his house first before he could go with us to the place where we were supposed to go and work at his brand new guest house. We went to his house, and his house was in the middle of this estate. It is really an expensive suburb, but it is closed up for the rest of the public. No one can go in there unless by invite, and at the gate they will ask you a lot of questions. We went to his house, and once we were in that estate, when we got out of the car, he told us to get inside and he locked us up. He then took our phones. Once we got inside his house, I saw that there were other women. When I counted the women that were inside, including me and the other women that I was with at that robot where he had picked us off, we were now 12 in total. And from that time onwards, that is when I realized that this man, he had kidnapped us. But what he wanted to do with us, I didn't even understand. He just gave us a lot of rules and he threatened us. He told us that we were not allowed to get out of his house. He said that once you get out of this house, you are going to get arrested, and I will not be responsible for that. As someone who didn't have any papers that allowed me to be in South Africa, I felt so afraid. I was afraid of being deported. The moment that he threatened us, I knew that my life was over. So I stayed indoors. The only time that we'll get out of the house is when he wanted us to get a little bit of sunshine. He used to do this early in the morning. We will get out, then we will stand in the middle of the driveway so that we can get a little bit of sunshine. And once you would feel that we have gotten enough of sunshine, you would take us back indoors. And there was no one who could save us, because there was no one who would drive into that estate without permission. The rest of his neighbors, they were just minding their own business. We were stuck. This man, what he used to do is that today he will tell you that tomorrow I am going to take you to the place where you will be working. Then when tomorrow comes, then he will give you another excuse. This happened for 4 days. But on the 4th day, I noticed that I had developed a funny problem, because I kept on having this stomach ache, like someone was busy cutting me in the stomach with a razor blade. This felt strange. I thought that maybe it was because of the food, but what surprised me is that if I would go to the toilet, nothing would come out. But I kept on having these symptoms, like if someone is having a drug withdrawal, that is what was happening to me. And I would feel so much cold straight into my bones. And what surprised me is that whenever this man would see that I am now so sick, because what I will do is that whenever I would feel that sharp pain in my stomach, as if someone was busy cutting me with a razor blade, I would then sleep on the floor or just hold my stomach so tightly because the pain was just too much for me. He would rush into the kitchen, then he would return back with a fruit juice. I don't know what kind of a fruit juice it was, but in the end, my brother, this man, he started to give me hard drugs. This was after 4 days. After a month, Brother Nashi, I was someone who was a full-time drug addict. If I needed some drugs, I had to do him a favor. Then he would give me those drugs. I was just a drug addict. Most of the times I'll be high, but there were times when I'll be sober. Whenever I'll be sober, I'll keep on thinking about my kids that I had left back home in Zim. And at that time, when I had came here to South Africa, it was because I had gotten divorced with my husband, and I wanted to prove a point that I can become an independent woman. So I told myself that if I go to Johannesburg, then I'll become an independent woman. When I arrived in South Africa, then I had to move to Cape Town because I heard that in Cape Town there were a lot of jobs, and here I was in Cape Town, kidnapped by this man, and I was stuck. There was no way for me to communicate with my ex-husband or my kids. Brother Nashi, we stayed in that estate, and what surprised me is that each and every month, I don't know how this man would know that you are now on your periods, because what this man used to do is that whenever you will be on your periods, he will just grab your hand, then he will go with you into this other room. His house was like this, Brother Nashi. It had an upstairs and a downstairs. Then it had a ground floor, and down there were 2 rooms. There was this other big room, and that big room, it looked more like a movie theater because it actually had a lot of chairs. So in this estate, a lot of rich people used to come. Most of them, they were men. They never came with their women. And whenever those men would come, they would do whatever they wanted with us. But before they would do anything that they wanted with us, they would go into that big room that was on the ground floor. They would watch a lot of movies. And the movies that they were watching, they always watched those old movies that were shot in black and white. Some of those movies did not have any sounds at all. I don't know why they used to watch those movies. What those rich men used to do is that whenever they would have finished watching their strange movies, that is when that man who was keeping us under house arrest would take us from the living room. We would have already bathed and put on a lot of perfume as he would have instructed us to do, and he would take us into that ground floor, and he would give us an instruction to please the men that were in his house. Those men used to do whatever they wanted with us. Then on that ground floor, there was a second room, but this one was a small room. It only had 1 bed with nothing. Whenever you were on your periods, that man will just grab you and he will go with you into that room that was on the ground floor, and he will lock you up in that room. What he used to do is that in the evening, he will come and he will give you a clean sanitary pad. so that you can put it on. Then in the morning, you would come and you would take that sanitary pad that you would have used throughout the night, the one that will be full of blood. I don't know where he was going with all of our sanitary pads, but he was doing this thing to all of us. I stayed at that man's house. This was for 7 months, Brother Nashi. For that 7 months that I was staying kidnapped in that house in Capetown, I never spoke with my kids back home. Whenever I would think about my kids back in Zim, I'll just cry. The reason why I would cry, I would say that maybe right now my kids think that I am dead. Maybe they are trying to get hold of me and my phone is going to voicemail. Maybe they think that mommy is dead. Yet I was kidnapped. I was staying in this house that was in the middle of that estate. Then one day we were sleeping. That man walked into that room where we used to sleep in and he woke us up. When he woke us up, he was with other men and they were like bodybuilders, those men. The way that he woke us up, he never gave us any chance to think about anything. Then he said, quickly wear your clothes, and he showed us the kind of clothes that he wanted us to wear. After that, when we got out of the house in the driveway, I saw that there was this other Mercedes-Benz that looks like a family bus and it was black in color. I will never forget that Mercedes-Benz because it was parked in the driveway with the sliding door already opened. Those bodybuilders pushed us into that black Mercedes small bus. It was the 12 of us. Amongst those women who were also kidnapped, there were 2 South African girls. Then some of the women, they were from Lesotho. Those men then pushed us into that car. I will never forget that car, Brother Nashi. But that car, it didn't have any number plates. When we got inside that car, then they covered our eyes with black clothes so that we cannot see anything or where we were going. But as those men were busy driving, I noticed that after a very long time, when we were driving, maybe after 5 or 6 hours, when they were driving, I noticed that here and there they would stop their car and you would feel that they would be dragging one of the women that I was with in that car outside. Then by the time that they dropped me in Johannesburg, that is when I realized what had happened. Those men were just dumping us all across the country in a place where they would know that you will be desperate and you will never find your way back to that house in Cape Town. When they dropped me in Joburg, I was lost. I didn't know where I was going because when I came to South Africa, I just stayed for a little bit in Joburg, so I didn't know anything about Joburg. When I was just walking around in Joburg, that is when 2 police officers stopped me. When they spoke with me, they realized that I was a foreigner. They got me arrested. I tried to tell them that I am a drug addict, but they failed to believe me. They just went with me to the cells. Brother Nashi, it was really difficult for me because I was not taken to any rehabilitation center. I was in the cell, and when the time came for me to take the drugs, there was no drugs. And my body was now asking for drugs. Then I started to have those withdrawal symptoms that you have if you do not take your drugs in time. My stomach was really painful. That pain that I felt the first time that I took drugs, it came back. It was like someone was busy cutting my stomach with a razor blade. I cried so much that the women that I was locked up with, they didn't understand what was going on with me, and I didn't want to tell them that I was a drug addict and these were the withdrawal symptoms. Whenever I would be given food, if I would try to eat the food, I'll just vomit. The pain was just too much, Brother Nashi. What I ended up doing was that I removed all of my clothes. Then I just slept on the floor. I just told myself that since the floor is cold, at least maybe the cold will take away the pain. I slept all night long on that cold floor, not wearing any clothes, but the pain was just too much. After that, Brother Nashi, that is when we were deported back to Zim. When I returned back home, when my husband heard that I was back home, I didn't have anything, no money, no groceries, not even a sign that showed that I had ever gone to South Africa. When my husband heard that I was back in Zim, he came back and he spoke with my parents, and he told my parents that he still wanted me and him to continue with our relationship. But my brother, I felt scared to tell my husband everything that happened to me when I was still in South Africa. Brother Nashi, you are the first person that I am telling all the things that happened to me when I was in South Africa. Apart from you, I have never told anyone. When I was still locked up in that house in Cape Town, there was this other young lady, the one who was a South African, but this one, she was different. She kept on telling me that she was a university student at Stellenbosch. So I kept on asking her, if you were a student at Stellenbosch University, how did you end up being kidnapped? She told me that she used to go to this club, and when she was in that club, that is when she started the habit of taking drugs, until she got so addicted that she was using all of the money that her parents would give her each and every month. When she would spend all of that money, that is when she met this man. Then she met that man, and the man told her that he would be able to provide all of the drugs that she ever needed, but the man only needed one thing from her, and that man told her that the only thing that he needed from her was her used pads. So that girl told me that each and every month, whenever she was on her period, she would go and meet up with that man. Then the man would be buying her all the drugs on a daily basis, all the drugs that she needed, until that man convinced her to go with her to his house. That is when she ended up being kidnapped by that man. Then there was this other woman who was from Lesotho. This woman from Lesotho, she was always sad. Most of the times, yes, she was high on those drugs, but most of the times she would be crying so much, and whenever she would cry, she would always cry saying that she left her child alone in this place that is called Soshanguve. The reason why she had left her child, it was because she had met this man who seemed to be a gentleman on Facebook. They spoke on Facebook, and the man proposed love to her via Facebook. Then that man sent her a lot of money so that she can travel from that place where she was saying that she was staying in Soshanguve, so that she can meet up with him. But that lady, whenever she would be crying, she would say, the last thing that I remember is that I was at Bosman. From there on, I don't even know what happened to me. I don't even know how I arrived here in Cape Town. The last thing that I remember is that I was waiting for this man at Bosman. Brother Nashi, I arrived back home in Zim. As of now, I am staying with my husband, but whenever I think about this thing that happened to me and the other 11 women that I was with in that house, when we were staying with that man who had kidnapped us, whenever I think about this story, I feel so sad, so much sad that tears will start to flow down my face. The only question that is on my mind is, this man, whenever he would take our used sanitary pads, where was he taking these sanitary pads to? This is my own secret, Brother Nashi. This kind of a secret that I've been keeping in my heart. Is it a secret that I can tell my husband, or should I just keep this secret until the day that I die? Apart from you, I have never told anyone. Even my own relatives don't even know this story. Dear listeners, right there was a message that I received. Then I had to ask one of our admins to give us a translation of this message. And I want to thank our dear sister who was saying that she was a slay queen. Because of her confession, a lot of women have been bringing their stories. Please let us talk about this issue in the comment section. I'll be back with another episode.